Welcome. This is the Second Opinion Sports Medicine podcast with the Pro Sports Doctors. I'm Dr. Dhokal.
I'm Dr. Glass.
Big D, how you doing, man?
Good, man. It's kind of another weird week. We're doing it on Zoom again, but this is good.
It is.
We'll roll with it, right?
No, it's good practice, and it's good to kind of be in different settings, and the conversations and the topics are the same, so it doesn't
Yeah,
matter whether we're in person or via Zoom. Although I do like seeing you face to face, but we'll
yeah.
do that next week for sure.
Yep. It's kind of how things happen. Life happens, right? And you just got to roll with it. So that's kind of what happened with us this week for our listeners. Things came up last minute, and we rolled with it. So we still want to get this done, though.
No, you know what I'm really happy about is how we spoke about the consistency of knocking this out weekly, because there's topical things that happen in the NFL weekly. We have
Mhm.
patients every day, and there's always things I can talk. I could do this daily with you, to be
Yeah.
honest. But it's nice to stay consistent despite whatever's happening in both our lives. And I'm glad that you made some space for it today, and I'm excited to
Yeah.
have a little convo with you.
Yeah, I think it's important, kind of like what we tell our patients every day, right? Is discipline and consistency, right? So that's
That's
what we made a promise to ourselves that we wanted to, have a certain amount of these under our belt, and we were going to stay committed this season and this year. And so we got to figure out a way to get it, even if it's not the normal time. Just like in life and rehab, things come up, and we can't get derailed, right? So
it's about adaptation and trying to you know push through on the uphill days and still complete the task or the objective. And today feels a little bit uphill. This week's felt a little uphill, if I'm being honest. But
mhm.
checking everything and off the boxes and still doing this is important. So, like I said, I appreciate you making the time, and excited to talk about a couple of things. I want to get your opinion on a few of the games this week. Were you able to sit and relax? Did you have a busy weekend? What went on with you?
It was a busy weekend. I was actually down in your end. Man, we were up Saturday and Sunday. We had tournaments for my youngest daughter, Bree.
Nice.
We had tournaments with their travel softball team down your way, Poway area, and we had to be up at 4 every morning to be down at the field at 6:45.
Wow.
So, man, 2 days in a row. So anyway, so it was busy, but luckily and unluckily, we got kind of knocked out early on Sunday, so it was a one and done tournament. So
Gotcha.
we Sunday we were headed home early, and I got to catch some games. So that was kind of the silver lining. So I actually got to watch some games. I watched one of my favorites, and I think we talked about all the Rams 49er game. I always
Always
like
good
to
to
watch that every year over the years. So
yeah.
I was really looking forward to watching that. I was hoping I'd get to watch it with my dad. We usually like to watch it, but we just the day did not work out for us to do that. But we texted and talked about it, so
Yeah.
it was good. But yeah, great.
Remind me who won that game again?
I don't know. My memory since COVID has not been the best. I can't remember. Sorry, bud.
I think the good guys won. I
Yeah.
only root for one LA team typically, but
But it was fun to watch McCaffrey do his thing, man.
yeah,
3 touchdowns, 3 different ways, man. That was cool.
I was hoping he'd get the trifecta after the pass and the reception. I was like,
Yeah,
somebody feed him and let him run one in.
right. Yeah.
It feels very Madden-esque. It's very cool to see.
Yep.
Speaking of the Niners, Debo Samuel's one of their stars was out for the game, which with all the hype with CMC, uh, I'm kind of ashamed to admit I didn't realize Debo was out for the first like two series.
Yeah.
And it's not because I don't have him on my fantasy team. I just was like, I just didn't realize, And he was out with a hamstring injury. There was somebody else, DK Metcalf, who they thought was going to be out for weeks, and I was surprised to see him play. Did you catch
Yeah.
that last week?
Yeah. I didn't, none of that was on my radar. So,
Got you. Yeah, they
yeah.
they were saying he was going to be out for weeks. Had lower leg injury. He was going to be sidelined for multiple weeks, and then he practiced limited practice, and then he was able to play. So my thought on that was just, man, it's a testament to how quickly these guys heal,
Yeah.
and being young and being in great shape goes a long way too.
Yep.
But it's also their training staff, their medical staff. Like, I'm sure they were working every single day to try to get him ready. And man, kudos to them. He
Yeah,
got the
well,
funds paid,
you
and
mentioned it last week on the podcast about, your one of your patients questioning the ankles and, why can't they just get back in? And you made a comment like, trust me, they want to be out there. There's no doubt in my mind that his hamstring is not 100% when he's out there because the way the progression was. So it's taped. I'm sure it's taped up, wrapped up, whatever, and that they are fighting through, pain and, restriction. But because of what they do, they make it look so good and make it look effortless, even despite, that pain. I mean, any one of us would not be rolling out there doing that. So,
no, it'd be like weeks off.
yeah.
And to any patient, any normal patient, say, give up the rec league for a few weeks. You don't want to make this worse. One thing I do appreciate about elite athletes is obviously they know their body, but
Mhm.
you can also adapt to, like we were speaking about adaptation earlier in life. In athletics, sometimes you have to adapt to what you have to work with, right? And so, whether that means you lost your star player and you change your game plan, or whether that means individually, you're not at 100% and you adapt what you do or how you do it. I mean, I'm sure he adapted his game. I'm sure he was like, okay, I know this ball is not coming to me. I'm going to taper it down. And maybe he didn't kick it into fifth gear all day
Right.
long. Or if it's his plant leg, when he's on one side of the field, maybe he cuts harder than if he's on the other side of the field, for instance.
Mhm.
So I didn't break his game tape down like that. I just saw he played, and my thought was, man, that's very cool that they got him back on the field.
Yes.
Yeah. What game did you catch on Sunday besides the Niners?
That was that one. And then, well, man, the one I watched for a second, but turned off real quick was the Raider Saint game. Man, that was brutal. I don't know if you saw any of that, but
Do you remember that score?
yeah. Oh no, I didn't. No.
No, no.
Man, that big old
No,
goose egg, man. How
they
do you
got
get
beat
shut
bad.
out? Like, how do you not get anything? Like, yeah,
Yeah, that's tough. I can't really speak on that because that goes to like, coaching and personnel and this and that. But
yeah,
you don't see shutouts very often in the NFL.
no.
So
That was rough to watch.
yeah, that's true. My Chargers had the bye this week, so
Yeah, they needed it.
they were resting up. Yeah, we had a few injuries for sure, and hopefully we can come back this week a little healthier. We play Atlanta in Atlanta this week. Let me just go over next week games real quick since we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Uh, so Thursday night football to start the week off. Week 9. This is episode 9 of Second Opinion Sports Medicine Podcast, and week 9 of the NFL season. So Thursday night football, we have the Eagles versus the Texans, and the Eagles are flying high. They're crushing it.
Yeah.
So it'll be good to see them on prime time for people who are outside of that local area that haven't seen them play. Sunday night football, Titans and Chiefs. So that's a division game for the Chargers. I'd like to see the Titans just run, and beat the Chiefs, but
Mhm.
Chiefs are high powered. They picked up a couple players. There's a lot of free agency movement today. I don't know if you heard or saw any of the.
I didn't get to. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement in the NFL. We can maybe speak on that next week
Mhm.
when we have a little more time to discuss those moves. Plus, the moves that were made, we'll know the impact that they have in this week's games.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested in that. Monday Night Football, we have the Ravens and the Saints. So that'll be an interesting game.
Mhm.
Saints, beat your Raiders this last week pretty handily, and the Ravens, I believe they made some free agency moves today as well. And so those are the three prime time games for Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. Some of the other games I thought were interesting: Chargers, Falcons. I mentioned the Seahawks, Cardinals, a divisional game.
Mhm.
Seahawks are leading the division right now
I
in the
know.
NFC
Yeah.
West.
After this weekend, I know.
Yeah,
Crazy.
so
That was
it's
a good game too. That was a crazy game. I watched the end of that one.
yeah, it was. It's interesting to see how this season is shaping up, and sometimes the season shapes up due to who's the healthiest, and sometimes the season shapes up because of some surprises. Some
Mhm.
draft picks that maybe hit people weren't expecting to hit, or players like Geno Smith that were expected to just kind of be serviceable. All of a sudden, they're playing at a high level, and
Right.
yeah, it's fun to see. Last game I'll mention for next week before I bring up a couple injuries. is the Rams versus the Bucks. And so, if I recall correctly, that was last year's NFC Championship game. The
Yep.
Rams ended up beating Tom Brady and the Bucks to go to the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
Ultimately, won the Super Bowl. So I'm interested to see how that game goes. The Rams coming off another slapdown by the 49ers. The Bucks have been losing, and they have injuries, but you don't see Tom Brady lose 3, 4 in a row very often ever.
No.
And so I'm interested to see that game just to see who comes out off the tarp.
Yeah.
Who picks themselves up and gets that W. So out
Well,
of those games I mentioned, any jump out that you definitely want to try to catch?
Well, that game will be interesting. We'll talk about it. Cup has been dealing with his ankle injury or ankle issues, and then
Yeah,
tried to get through and got taken out in the last game. So that'll be an interesting dynamic. Luckily, it's not, from what I read, not serious. So, but he's kind of been babying it for the last couple of weeks. Not babying it, but working around it. Like we've talked about, all these injuries that we're seeing
adapt to it, right?
did not start, typically a lot of these aren't starting that game, right? They're
Yeah,
leading up to it. So just like he'd been having an issue, and they've been dealing with it. And one wrong move or turn can, take him out for a series or more. So that'll be interesting to see how he comes back. No doubt in my mind he'll come back and be able to play. That's a game he doesn't want to miss. So, and since they mentioned it's not too significant, I'm assuming he'll come back and be able to play.
they haven't had their bye week yet, I don't think, right?
I don't believe so. No. So
Okay,
yeah. So that game,
rest for anybody.
Tennessee game too. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Now with my daughter out in Tennessee, we've become kind of Tennessee sports fans now. It's
Yeah, yeah, of course.
just kind of how it is.
Yeah,
We figure, man, what are we gonna do? So it's kind of fun getting following teams that we normally would have never
sure.
followed. So we're now kind of Braves fans and Tennessee Titan fans. So
Man, I'll tell you what, that Tennessee stadium, that city, I've been to several games there, and it is it is probably, I'd say a top 10 NFL destination for sure. I was almost going to say top 5,
mm,
but if I put some thought to it, maybe like Miami or some New York, maybe some of those places
yeah.
uh, might jump in the lead. But it is really fun there. It's a fun city. You can walk to the stadium. I hope you get the opportunity to go with your family and catch a
Yeah.
football game.
Well, through hockey, I spent some time out there with the pro hockey chiropractic society that I'm part of.
Uh-huh.
We had one of our annual conferences out there and got to tour the city and then tour the arena there where the Predators play. So, but then the Titan Stadium is right there too. So,
Yeah.
yeah, the fans, regardless of what it is, it's a great city.
Yeah, they come to party for sure, and they
Yeah, for sure.
really like support their team, which is cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had a little bit of news from last week. I don't know if you recall, we were talking about a particular player who had a eye fracture.
Yeah.
His name's Daniel Bellinger. He's the rookie tight end for the Giants, and neither of us was sure really what had happened last week. I just, eye fracture. That's not really super
Yeah.
common. Turns out he was poked in the eye. Just did a quick little search on what happened. He got poked in the eye. I guess must have gone through the helmet. But an
Mm.
aggressive a poke in the eye is a poke in the eye, and then
Yeah.
there's like an orbital fracture. So he actually fractured his eye socket and his septum. So it
Oh,
almost,
so it actually did fracture. It wasn't just a poke.
yes, he actually fractured it. So I mean, I feel like that's a punch, not a
Yeah.
poke. You know.
That's some Bruce Lee stuff.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll recover quickly. Hopefully his vision's not affected. I didn't see anything that said that it was going to be a permanent issue, so that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Um, in some more somber news, I sent you a link today. The son of Mike Zimmer, the Vikings coach,
Yeah.
the Bengals assistant coach, his name's Adam Zimmer. He passed away today or last night.
Yeah, I did a deep dive on that, and as of now, or as of when I was at work, I couldn't find anything on it yet. They haven't reported. Have you heard the cause?
You know what? I haven't. I was busy in the office all day long,
Yeah.
so I was going to reach out to somebody that would probably know.
Yeah.
Um, did the same, tried to see if something popped up, but out of, they're not saying what it was.
Yeah.
He's 38 years old. It's just, that's terrible. He has a wife,
Yeah.
he has kids, and whatever it was, man, it really made me pause for a second. Just we talked last week how life is short, and I had a reminder of that this week myself, and then so to read that, my heart went out to his family, and hopefully, there's no recovering off losing somebody like that. So hopefully, they can get through it, and yeah, I don't even really have anything to say
Yeah.
about it other than it makes me sad to hear.
Yeah. It's sad, and it's moments like these. I think we talked about it. Maybe the first or second episode is like, now's the time to reflect on our own lives when we come across both of us didn't know him, but
Right.
still in the family, and yeah, you got to take a moment to reflect on life in general, and the relationships you have close by you, and make sure that they're being nurtured
Right.
when you can, right? So, yeah,
100%.
yeah.
That's one of the reasons that I'm glad that we do this. If
Mhm.
for nothing else, it gives us an excuse to connect and talk about things that are,
Yeah,
professional
I
and
think,
otherwise.
yeah, I think if people were watching this or hearing this, they would think, man, these guys have been at the hip for 20 years. The reality is, man, there's been a long time between, our connections, and it wasn't until, yeah, we would have, every year we would have little dabbles on holidays or birthdays, just checking in with each other,
For sure.
or with certain cases, right? But, I think it's a good testament to true friendship, literally, I mean, a decade almost had gone by
Yeah.
where we hadn't had this interaction like it is. But honestly, I remember the day you called me when I was not doing so good post COVID, my stent, and
Mhm.
we just picked up right where we left, and it was good, man. And so
Well,
you
what I want to say about that is I had been thinking of you several times, and was just like, sending vibes like, oh, I hope Dustin's doing well.
yeah,
I was thinking about how we should talk about how we wanted to do this podcast, and the logistics of it. And so I had a thought and was like, oh, shoot him a text or send him a little Instagram DM or something.
yeah,
And then I said, bro, you're 40. You can pick up and actually do what we used to do and call,
yeah, right.
And so for whatever reason at that moment, I was like, let me just leave him a little voicemail. I'd rather just leave you a quick message than send you a long text. And I'm glad you picked up. You didn't sound good that day. And so I was like, yo, what's going on? And yeah, it was like no time had passed because even though we didn't talk much, I thought of you often, whether it was work stuff or otherwise.
Right.
It's been Chargers versus Raiders and another beat down. And I'm like, somewhere Dustin knows
Always,
how it is.
never miss a moment.
But yeah, I'm glad that we were able to do that.
Yeah.
And I guess my point is, if you think of somebody, give them a ring.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
even just hey, I had a patient ask me, the other day, we were just talking about losing contact with people,
Mhm.
and I said, you can just shoot a text. I've been shooting texts to people randomly and just being like, hey man, thinking of you, just wanted to say hi. Because sometimes you think of somebody and you don't know exactly what to say.
Yeah.
Like, you can just say, I'm just checking in, and that's
Mhm.
enough. It makes me happy
Right.
when somebody sends a little, hey, just checking in text.
Yep.
So I'm glad we did that. I wanted to bring up a patient case today that came in, and one of the things I thought of was I wish Dustin was here, because one, I could have used two people on this person. He's a high level military guy, 24 years service, and he came in today as a new patient. And I'm just going to list the things that he had going on. So he had a torn and repaired ACL 2 years ago. He's had two ruptured discs in his lumbar spine, 4 and 5, L4, L5, two ruptured discs in his C spine, 3, 4. And what's bothering him the most, interestingly enough, is what I determined to be biceps tendonitis in his shoulder. So he was like, my shoulder really hurts. got to wear these like rucksacks, and like sometimes I'm like holding a weapon and like it's bothering me when I'm, so he's showing me all his positional stuff. That positional stuff's important if you're an athlete, if you're playing defense, offense, and it's just as important if you're sitting at home at a desk. I want to know your ergonomics. For him, work wise, he's carrying weapons, he's carrying a bunch of equipment, belts, awkward situations. And so we kind of went into, that type of stuff. So I was working on his bicep tendon and freeing it up, and was wondering where to start with this guy, And so I know you've had patients before that have a multitude of issues. And so for him, his body is his livelihood, not like athletes that make their livelihood, but like it's life or death for him, right? So I'm super focused on how can I get him better the quickest. And it made me think, I want to talk to Dustin about when he has somebody who comes in that has multiple issues. How do you attack that? What's your mindset on that for people that are listening, or maybe people that have multiple pain points,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's actually one of the cases. I have one in my office right now. Uh, CrossFitter, very intense, very competitive, same kind of thing, female, does not want to stop, but almost same presentation. So anyways, for the listeners, these are things we see on a regular basis, and it comes down to, okay, that shoulder area, let's look at everything that crosses it. What else could it be? And one of the things, you got to rule out that neck thing, right? So
Right.
especially with his history of neck, C3, 4, 5, going through that area, we got to make sure. Most of the time it's not that issue, but you don't want to be naive. We don't want to be naive and just assume that all shoulder things are coming from the shoulder. Most people will go, oh, it's rotator, it's bicep tendon. Okay, well, that might be the case, but let me look above and below the area. Let me look at the elbow, let me look at the neck, and then we'll get to the shoulder. But with the biceps in particular, I like to look at the way the pec comes across, because the bicep comes through here. And then, people listening can't see what I'm pointing to, but the bicep comes through that groove that we have, and then the pec crosses over the top of it. And then the supraspinatus, which is the main rotator cuff muscle that comes down across the arm that holds the humerus in the socket, the bicep tendon goes underneath that. So you got
Right in that
this
groove.
matrix of layers,
Yeah.
right? So supraspinatus, bicep tendon, and pec coming over the cross, just to name three of them. And then you got other structures too. So I kind of clear out when I'm dealing with the bicep tendon pain. I like to clear out pec and supraspinatus as well to
Yep.
lift it off that tendon, kind of, right? So
Absolutely.
those are two
Compress it.
things I look at, and then those are easy ones to send the patient home with some self-care that they can also open up as well. Again, we're trying to get the pressure off that tendon if it is the area. So
Yeah.
um, just from a quick little, that's kind of what I like to go after. And then we start kind of going through the layers and ruling in and ruling out things as we go, right? But you got to start somewhere. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think like we spoke last week, improvement is improvement. And what you don't want is 2 steps forward, 3 steps backwards.
right.
Even though you get that temporary improvement, we're looking for long lasting, effects, right?
Yeah.
So my methodology with him was basically what you said, was to assess it. He was concerned with his low back and his neck with the disc issue. And I said, hey, we can do a lot with that without even adjusting it, like just because I'm a chiropractor doesn't mean we adjust everything. We're going to let that be, but we're going to do some stuff. And so we did some ART with his neck. We did a little bit of gentle traction. He was really locked up. And so we just kind of released the scalenes, released the traps with some manual work, and then got in on that shoulder. Like you were saying, it was layers. And I actually explained that to him. I'm like, it's not just a block of muscle. You have this muscle and this muscle and this muscle and this muscle, and they should be separate. They should all glide.
Mhm.
Sometimes all that gets smushed. So if I do compression work, that's going to further compress it. So we did a little bit of cupping and some mobility to open it up. It was only a 30-minute session, but he left and was like, hey, it feels freer, and
Yeah.
so I think we're trending in the right direction.
Yeah, and one thing on that, I know we got to go soon, but one thing with that, when people do leave, and we don't have any X-ray or MRI or any imaging right at that moment, and they can leave because one of the biggest concerns is it anatomical, is it mechanical, or is it systemic in nature? Which one is it? We don't know yet,
Yeah.
but we do know from our assessment that it's probably mechanical in nature, in a lot of cases, when there's been no obvious trauma. So when they leave and they say, "Man, it's feeling better. I have more range or less pain," I tell them, "Hey, this is perfect. Even if it's temporary, even if by time you get home and
Yeah.
it's tight again, or get out of your car, it's tight again and it's painful, the fact that you had some temporary tells me that it can get better. Because if there's
Absolutely.
something more damaged in there, it won't give you that little window because it doesn't want you to further do damage more. So it doesn't give you that little window of I feel okay. So
Yeah.
when we do get that little temporary, I said, perfect. Don't worry if it comes back tight and sore the next day. We're just going to keep collecting those temporary until it's lasting. But then they leave going, okay, I get that. I understand that. And then that gives them some incentive to not give up on it because we know the next morning when it's sore and tight, they're like, oh, it didn't work. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it didn't work. It just means we have more work to do.
That's well put. I think you mentioned that last week, and that's worth repeating and reiterating today. I say sometimes it's like unlocking a door. Oh, we
Mhm.
unlocked it. It's still shut. We unlocked it. The door opened. Okay, it opened and it's shut again. That's all right. But we got it to crack open. Now, next time we'll open it more.
Yeah,
I
nice.
want to touch base and talk more about that next week with you, Dustin. I know we're on a little bit of a limited time
Yep.
today via Zoom, but I am glad that we checked this off the list. I appreciate at least talking about the bicep tendonitis and going over next week's games. I'm curious to see how things shake out. I'm looking forward to meeting with you next week in person,
Yes,
having a
sir.
little more of an extended chat. There's a lot of things I want to talk about, a couple more injuries, and we'll touch base on those next week.
Yeah, luckily this week, to be honest, there weren't too many injuries in the NFL,
Best
which was
week.
one of those weeks we were hoping for. So this actually
Absolutely.
worked out okay.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, thank you guys for listening. We'll check in next week. As always, you can watch us live on YouTube. You can download us on Spotify or Apple as well. We love doing this. Thanks for checking us out. We're the Second Opinion Sports Medicine Podcast with the pro sports doctors, Dr. Dhokal.
Dr. Glass, and huge shout out to Stephen and Manny, the guys that make this happen. So